I've realised that every single person who's ever hurt me was looking for some positive experience in doing what they did. That pain for him is entirely real. That's very much in his experience. In order to transform that relationship, we need to bring loving awareness to his pain.
So yeah, the intention was for us to stay together.
So you had the intention to stay together. You wanted the relationship to improve. You wanted to feel more fulfillment. Before we can hold those two things, the story tends to take a victim villain, silenced, belittled, sad, angry, kind of maybe a bit ashamed that you had tolerated or not spoken up. The single most important thing for us to start with in the midst of any relationship upset is being able to pay attention to what we're experiencing. The more I accuse you, the more you defend. As you can start to feel into the experience he was having beneath the behaviour that you don't condone that really hurt you, can you start to take it less personally?
Welcome to the Resource Podcast team, where we are making hard conversations easier. And on that, it's pretty fitting for us to have our next guest, who is James Fish Gill, who is a communication and conflicts coach, and which in essence kind of translates into relationships, whether that is, romantic or within the workplace. And you are a pretty exceptional person who has just written a book. So we're going to be going into a little bit of depth around that. But thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Becky. Such a joy to be here with you.
Stop it. I'm excited. I think after reading parts, people who know me well would say that I'm not necessarily a book reader, but I was definitely enthralled in the start of your book, and I was just there taking notes. Oh, this, we need to talk about this. However, we don't have 16 days to have a conversation today. So today we're going to be just lucky enough to kind of touch on what you've spoken about in the book, and then a little bit about yourself and what's led you to this point. So thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited, not only to be able to have this conversation with you, but for also the listeners to be able to hear and take away from, what we're going to learn from you.
Thank you. I'm grateful because, let's face it, relationship is difficult. Relationship of any kind is difficult. And we can end up in very uncomfortable positions and isolated and feeling hurt and disappointed. And so thanks for being committed to bringing this work into the world.
Hey, it's just the beginning, I feel, as well, for people, because, when we start talking about this, people might take everything away from the podcast. But for some people, they might take one or two things that they can share with other people and improve their lives. So, I think, when I was thinking of the first question to ask you, I had a million, because for, being a human in this world, interesting, being a man in this world, really interesting, and being in a relationship in this world is, an added extra on top of all of that. And I was so intrigued to ask you, I suppose, what got you to the point of being able to have, this positive communication or helping people with communication. And I had some insight into that when I was reading the book. How you open the book, or one of the first things that you speak about, and I hope you don't mind me, going straight into your trauma.
Please do. Please do.
Some of the toughest points of your life. But one of the things that you said was, or the quote was, you're sitting in, a room that has been safe for you previously, and your partner is sitting across from you, looking at you in a way that, you don't necessarily recognize. And she says to you, I'm not going to be staying for this session. I'm here to end things. And, I don't want to finish off the quote, but it's a pretty powerful way to start the book, and I think a really powerful way to start the conversation. Can you talk us through that moment, and I suppose what led you down the path that you've ended up going down now to have these conversations with, people and relationships?
Yeah, of course. So, I opened the book with the story of me and my partner attending what I thought was going to be a therapy session together, and ending up finding that she was leaving the relationship. And that, and countless other moments in my life of relationship rupture, what I call rupture is like when a relationship kind of breaks into parts, where suddenly what we thought was the connection fractures. And we all go through that in all kinds of relationships. There's a moment often a single moment, but often sort of a series of moments that actually lead to the relationship rupture. And suddenly we're in uncharted waters. We're feeling unsteady. So my life has been well populated by relationship breakdown. And to start with, that was just downright confusing and upsetting. And I would reach the same conclusions that we all naturally reach, which is that some people are such and suches for doing things to me, or that I'm a such and such for doing things to them. But in the end, that just didn't hold enough weight or water for me. It just didn't feel true enough. So really, my pathway here has been personally a series of very, very confusing relationship breakdowns, and professionally working with thousands of people over the last 15 years at diving into their stories of relationship conflict. And what I've discovered, what I present in the book, is the back end. Like, you know how a website has a front end, which is what you see, and the back end is the code that gives you what you see. So I've discovered the back end of conflict, the mechanism in our human minds that creates the story of me versus you, where things become like opposing teams and we start to fight for our experience to be recognized and then leave each other feeling unrecognized. And from there, things escalate. So now that I've discovered the back end of conflict, I now teach how to transform or resolve at any moment of conflict, any moment of upset as it arises. Which sounds simple, but it takes a lot of practice because it's not at all what the mind is naturally designed for.
Mm-hmm. And, you touch on so many things there. And I think a lot of people are going to resonate with, one, your experience that you've had. And, you speak about confusing relationship breakdowns. I know I put out the question to social media and was asking people when I knew that you were coming onto the podcast, has there been anything that you would like to ask somebody who speaks about around relationships? And all of the questions kind of come to that, where you have that not knowing or the confusion when you have the breakups or even when you're going through it with people. I find it, really interesting as well that through the pain that you've gone through, that confusion that you've gone through, is that you made a decision to go down the track that you ended up going down, where you took that responsibility, you looked at it, what was it that you were able to do, and now you're able to help people with it. It's something that you must be very passionate about, and there must have been, I suppose, a pivotal moment or a few pivotal moments in your life where you've either seen people struggle or you've had your own struggles. Do you remember, aside from that moment sitting in that room with your partner, do you remember the little moments that have led to this point in your life for you to take that direction? Because I know it's not just one. Do you remember?
Yeah. And if we had long enough, I could recount hundreds of thousands actually. But I think it's probably fair to say that I've had some really shitty things done to me by people I trusted, like really shitty things. By shitty things, I mean things that really deeply impacted me, left me feeling hurt, left me feeling criticized, left me feeling cast out, left me feeling villainized, left me feeling abandoned. Countless moments in my relationship life where shitty things have been done. And, Becky, I've done some really shitty things to people. By that I mean I've really hurt people I loved. I've left them feeling injured, hurt, betrayed, confused, rejected. And I think in the midst of all of that, I just started to get curious because I know that I'm not a bad person. In fact, the more I learn to observe myself, the more I see my innate goodness. Like I'm a magnificent human. I'm deeply loving. I always want the best for me and for those around me. So in the end, I started to think, well, how am I a deeply good person and yet bring pain to those I love? Which then helped me kind of turn that around and think, okay, well, maybe if others are deeply good people as well, what had them be so hurtful towards me? And that really was the inquiry that led to this deeper work of understanding the innate goodness in all human beings, even behind the shittiest things that we've done. And the ways that we behave and speak in relationship often create unintended pain for others, very often. In fact, every relationship conflict moment is characterized by me wanting something and creating some sort of pain for you, you wanting something and creating some sort of pain for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem that we get stuck in is that I think that because people have done things that hurt me, that they are hurtful. And the book helps us tease that notion open and recognize that my pain, the pain that I experienced as a result of what people did, is 100% real and true. And, so that's in one hand, and what those people were actually longing for in what they did
Mm-hmm.
is a whole other thing. And now, in my own healing using this method, I've realized that every single person who's ever hurt me was looking for some positive experience in doing what they did. And the pain it brought me is entirely real. That's difficult for the mind to conceive of,
Mm-hmm.
but I call this heart-led work because actually once we can feel into our pain and how real it is and feel into the deeper longing of the other, then we kind of come to this new place where we can start to see that they were unskillful. They're not bad or wrong. They're not villainous. They're not narcissists. They're not manipulators. They're actually just unskillful in their actions to get some kind of positive experience that they were chasing. I wonder if I could put you on the spot here.
Sure.
I wonder if you could think, and you don't have to tell us what it is, but I wonder if you could think about the most hurtful thing you've ever done.
Oh, okay.
Some pain that you've caused someone that I bet you didn't wake up that morning thinking, I want someone to suffer, but you did or said something that created great pain for someone that you care about.
It's really interesting when you ask that question because my mind goes straight to, I would never hurt anybody. I can't remember. And I don't I don't keep those things in my mind.
Yeah.
So I'd have to take a moment.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that if you ask somebody else, what has Becky done to hurt you before, they might be able to come up with things. So when it comes to, I suppose, relationships, in my most recent relationship, I remember my partner saying to me once we'd broken up that he felt blindsided, that, that just came out of nowhere and there was nothing in the lead up to it. You just have given up.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that he felt pretty hurt by that. So that's probably one of the things that comes up for me at the moment.
Beautiful. Okay, great. So that's a great example. So let's start with recognizing the pain that created for him. So he felt blindsided, he felt hurt, he might have felt confused, rejected. Feelings underneath that might have been anger, sorrow, disappointment. Am I right?
100%.
Maybe?
Yep.
Cool. Now, so that pain for him is entirely real.
Mm-hmm.
That's very much in his experience. And in order to repair or in order to transform that relationship upset, we need to bring loving awareness to his pain, because that's how pain heals, by being met with loving awareness, non-judgmental awareness. So let's hold his pain in one hand. Let's, in the other hand, start to feel into what you were longing for in breaking up with him, and 2, in not speaking to him earlier or not revealing more of your upset until you did. Because it wasn't malicious.
No.
What we will find is it's not malicious. You didn't wake up one morning thinking, how can I bring him rejection, anger, sorrow, and confusion? That was not part of your plan. It is definitely part of the impact you had.
Mm-hmm.
But over here in this other hand, what was your beautiful, tender, magnificent human heart actually longing for?
It was it was for a successful relationship. And when he said that, I was like, I've told you, we've had this conversation so many times, but I've obviously not communicated in a way that you were listening or being able to hear.
Yeah.
So I would say my intention, and as it is always with relationships, is to stay together and work through things.
Yeah.
But when I finally got to that point, I'd made up my mind. It's like I'd already had that conversation, and he was there, but maybe not there, because when he said that he was blindsided, and I've heard this so many times before from people as well, that it just came out of nowhere. So there was obviously a communication breakdown for me to think that I'd had that conversation with him and that I'd told you so many times. So yeah, the intention was for us to stay together.
Yeah. So you had the intention to stay together. You were speaking to him at various times because you wanted the relationship to improve. You wanted to feel more fulfillment. You might have not spoken to him at other times because you might have actually wanted the relationship to feel kind of spacious and easy rather than always kind of weighed down by conversations. And then you spoke to him about separating because what were you longing for in separating from him?
Or just free, to be free of I got to a point where it was not enjoyable anymore. I felt trapped in the relationship that I was in.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I wanted to be free from that. I've in that particular relationship, I suppose I felt really manipulated, and I felt uncomfortable, and I felt like I'd been made to be small. Without the self-acknowledgement of the work that I've done to see my part in that, I was fully blaming him. I was angry with him. I was angry with him that he, I suppose, hadn't listened to me. He hadn't done the work, and he'd, I suppose, lied to me to get to that point in the relationship. That was where I was at. That's why I wanted to get out of there.
Yeah, so the action you took was separating. It was based on a very magnificent, very human longing for freedom and to get out of the pain that you were stuck in. Like all humans do. We are constantly taking actions to move away from pain that we don't want to tolerate anymore, or stuckness or stagnancy or disappointment. So that's what you were hoping for. That's the action you took, and this is the pain it created. So now we're working with the reality. Before we can hold those two things, the story tends to take a victim-villain. So if I go and speak to him in the heat of the moment, he's like, well, she's just a this.
Yeah.
She blindsided me. She doesn't care. She's not committed, etc. He just naturally would tell a story about you based on his pain.
Mm-hmm.
If we go and talk to you in the heat of the moment, because you're connected with your intentions and it's wrapped in the context of your life, you're like, no, I'm a good person. I just want to be free from all this disappointment.
And I've absolutely told stories about him.
Yeah, and so that means he's a such and such, right? So he's telling stories about you, you're telling stories about him. All that's happening there is that he's got access to his experience, which is his pain, and you've got access to your experience, which is what you were actually really longing for.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's happening there is so natural. You as a human only have access to your experience and then start to see him a certain way based on your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And he only has access to his experience and starts to see you a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of you are standing in the truth. The truth is, the whole picture is that Becky separated from her partner in her longing to feel freedom and alignment in relationship in the future, and it created great sense of rejection and hurt and sorrow for him. That's the truth. In that story, there's no victim and no villain. He's having an experience, you're having an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Is that starting to make some sense?
It's like validation, I suppose, for both parties.
Yeah.
And where I've danced, like, I've had this conversation with friends before, where I tend to dance is understanding other people's experiences before I understand my own. It's like I tend to, I don't know if that's unique or if that's like a gendered thing or if that's an upbringing thing, but I tend to go to, how have I made that person feel? And it's probably why I stayed in the relationship as long as I did, instead of understanding and acknowledging how I suppose I feel. But something that comes up, when you ask this question, and where my brain went really easily when you were talking about it in that way, is where I've found a villain in my life in other ways.
Yeah.
And so can I share with you one? There's one,
Please.
in life
Take
at the
me
moment,
to
and
the villain
I
point.
it's I've always tried my very bloody best to make sure that I'm working through things and I'm doing the work and I'm, making sure that I'm having the conversations that are going to be, conducive to me healing and moving past things. But there's this one situation
Really stuck.
that really stuck, and it
great.
always pops up into my mind
go
where this
there.
person is the villain. So without going into too much depth around it, it was a friend of mine who got me a job that got me. I was in a pickle at the time. I was financially in about 50 grand's worth of debt. I was not in a really good place mentally, and this friend had been there for, we'd call each other weekly, and this friend got me this job, and that job ended up getting me into a much better financial position now. Whenever I would be doing the job that I was supposed to be doing, among telling me like, that was good, but that was fucking terrible, those bits. And I felt really belittled in those moments. I ended up having panic attacks through the things that I was doing. While I was in this, relationship, not romantic, but in this professional relationship with him, I kept on pushing them all aside.
Yeah.
But I kept on. I remember sitting across from this person just hating them, absolutely hating them because of what was happening in that moment.
Yeah.
And, allowing those things to be happening, but wondering how I could get out of them.
Yeah.
Since then, we've separated from our friendship and our working relationship. But it's been such a long time, and I still speak about it, much less.
Yeah.
And I still see him as a villain. I still don't understand what happened.
Yeah.
And I still get really angry because I know that if it happened with me, what do I need to do? Should I be doing something? Should I have spoken up about those things? And I've painted him in such a way that he is a horrible, nasty person.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. It's one of the only things that's kind of stuck around. So I've obviously got blind spots. I've obviously got things that there's something in that journey of me being able to move past it. Help me see those blind spots. And I suppose, it would be great to hear from you to release that, because it's exhausting having to think about it often or think about those times.
Yeah, you're right. It's very honest of you to say that, first of all, to identify that you hold him as the villain in the story, which, by the way, is entirely natural. The mind wants to create a villain anytime we've been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Very natural. And I'm not, in the book, I don't talk against that. I actually just say, let's recognize that the mind does that.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, very human of us, all of us create villains in our stories when we've been wounded by what they did. And you're right to speak about the energy drain of actually carrying that around. Like, it's like the more villains we have in our stories of our life, the more weighed down by that. And one of the things that clients experience when they work with me is a sense of freedom and relief from not having to carry those stories around anymore. Now, let me be very clear about a couple of things. Your pain is real, utterly, and I'm about to maybe invite you to speak a little bit more to your pain. Your pain is real. And can I ask you, did you tolerate, or are you okay with what he did?
At the time, I tolerated it. I remember.
But are you okay with it
not
now?
No,
not
not
now.
at all.
Great.
No.
So you have every right to be absolutely not okay with what he ever did, right? Let's pin that and keep it set. I'm not challenging you on that. I'll never ask you to be okay with what he did. Let's talk about the pain that came up for you. What did it leave you feeling, if you feel comfortable? Some of the emotions that his behaviour brought up in you.
I suppose I remember at that time, like I felt really belittled and really humiliated. There was a lot
Yes.
of times I felt really conflicted because of the, how passionate I am about having conversations and speaking up. I felt really silenced
Yeah.
and gagged,
Yeah.
in being able to, the pain I suppose that I felt as well. I felt really deceived, I suppose, in our friendship.
Yeah.
And I was really angry
Yeah.
that those things that had happened. And it was over the course of months,
Yeah.
But I was also really angry with myself, actually, that I'd allowed that
Of course.
to happen.
Of course.
So that was probably,
Yeah.
deceived was probably the biggest one.
Deceived,
And I was
angry,
sad. I was sad
silenced.
to lose a friendship
Yeah.
when it was actually happening. Before the biggest part happened, before I was sad to be losing that friendship because what I thought we had and what I thought it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
So I was upset as well.
Absolutely. Silenced, belittled, sad, angry, kind of maybe a bit ashamed that you had tolerated or not spoken
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, ashamed.
Yeah.
Big one.
Got it. And deceived in terms of like what you thought you were getting from the friendship in terms of safety.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that actually it was a different environment that you had expected.
Mm-hmm.
So disappointment, frustration. Did it feel lonely being
I felt, if
like
it weren't
alone?
for the network that I have and having had a few experiences in the past, I did get to the point where I felt isolated in what was happening.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
Really
got it.
lonely when it was actually happening.
Got it. Beautiful. So those people listening to this podcast will have their own version of your story where someone's done something that's really impacted them. And so the first thing I would just encourage people to do is actually, like you've just done, really pay attention to what very, very, very real painful emotions were present.
Mm-hmm.
They're 100% true. And if we were to work together over time, I would continue to strengthen your ability to validate those feelings and recognize them. Because your emotional response to what happened is telling you a lot about your boundaries. It's telling you a lot about what you need to feel safe in relationship, in friendship. It's telling you a lot about how you need to be treated, to feel open-hearted. So let's hold that in one hand. So your pain is real and you won't tolerate what he did. You're not accepting what he did. Nowhere here are we talking about accepting what he did. And here's the absolute crux of this work, the absolute crux of what I teach. In any single moment of relationship conflict, we're having an experience that's real and rich and nuanced and complex and deeply human. And it turns out they are also having an experience which is, believe it or not, deeply rich, real, complex, nuanced, human, utterly. We don't have access to that truth normally because here you are, Becky, in your very uncomfortable situation. You've just got the pain you're in and what you're hoping for. That's all you've got access to. You don't have access to his experience. The mind doesn't naturally reach into someone else's world and feel the reality of it. It's kind of impossible for us. And yet, you and he are both having experiences in that moment. So somewhere along the line, we get to the point where we realize his behavior was an expression of some experience he was having. We're still not tolerating it. We'll never ask you to accept what he did, and we're still not dismissing the pain it brought you. If we're willing, and we don't ever have to be, don't ever, ever, ever have to be willing to do this work. Only the courageous people who are really ready to heal deeply can do this work. So my question would be, feeling into his experience, if you can just start to, what might have been alive for him? What might he have been experiencing beneath such kind of shitty, inappropriate, unfair, hurtful, confusing behavior? Now, you don't have to do this work. And whether you're willing to or not, it's important for us to recognize as human beings, there's always an experience over there. Even if we can't feel into it, it's real and true. We don't have to ever feel into it, but it's there. All human behavior, here's here's the key point, all human behavior arises directly from an experience we're having. So the things he did actually came from what he was experiencing. Can you start to feel into any of what that could have been?
I think having thought about it for a long time,
Yeah.
I've obviously dissected.
Yeah.
I am somebody who thinks things over a lot and tries to think
Yeah.
about other people's experiences. And it did feel like, I don't want to say projection, but it did feel like he'd been hurt or a few things. It felt like he'd been hurt by somebody else who looked like me in his past. And it was like playing out again. That's what the conclusion that I came to. Obviously, I don't know if that is true. I can also imagine that I was really hard work in that time. And his experience potentially that he's trying, who's to say he wasn't trying his best to make me my best, I have a habit of going there sometimes in thanking people for the shitty things that they've done to me, but I know that that's not everyone. But
let's come back into what you think he might have been experiencing, though. Like, it's fine if we kind of sort of frame it through that kind of spiritual lens of like, well, he was just showing me what I needed to know about, but actually let's come back into the reality, because he was waking up every morning during that time, having certain feelings and thoughts, going to work with you, doing certain behaviors. What's some of the stuff that starts to make sense of? We're not condoning what he's done, and we're not dismissing the pain it's brought you, but we're actually starting to put ourselves right in his shoes on his terms.
Yep.
Was there confusion maybe about his attraction to you?
Potentially, well, I don't know. That's one thing that has clear, a little bit clear that comes, maybe.
Maybe there was some kind of attraction that he was unreconciled about,
Yep.
felt uncomfortable to speak to you about, and ended up just very awkwardly and inappropriately touching you.
Yep.
Not condoning it.
No.
Not dismissing the very real pain it brought you. Like unforgivable.
Yep.
And just starting to reach into where that arose from. Where's the humanness in that? What's the belittling like when he would kind of criticize your work?
I feel
what
as
might
though
what might he have been experiencing in himself, in the relationship with you, or in the relationship to work, that might have left him being so kind of critical, almost brutally critical, perhaps?
well, maybe in himself, like he did. I know that him bringing me on board to do the role, like anytime you get somebody a job, you're like, shit, I hope you show up well. I hope you don't call in sick. So I don't know if he's, thinking, oh, fuck, she's not as good as I thought she was. She's going to end up, messing my opportunity up.
Got it. So there might have been some concern for him of your work not matching a standard that he wanted you to match, which might reflect poorly on his reputation at work. Might have been some anxiety around
reputation.
your performance.
I think reputation is a big
fear
thing
of his reputation being tainted by your performance.
Yeah.
But now, we're not saying he skillfully spoke to you about it. Sounds like he did it very unskillfully because it created pain for you. But we're just starting to feel into what's the awkward, painful human experience he might have been having that led to his very difficult, painful behavior. Because if my 3-year-old is screaming, having a screaming fit in the middle of a supermarket, it's because she's experiencing great disappointment about not getting M&Ms. So that screaming fit, that tantrum doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of the experience of extreme disappointment that she feels overwhelmed by.
Yeah.
I know that we're talking about a grown man compared to a 3-year-old, but actually a lot of our most difficult behaviour is an expression of overwhelm and pain. Not proud of how we as human beings act on that, but getting tuned into the fact that often the most hurtful things we do arise from the painful experiences that we're having. So there could have been a fear of his reputation. There could have been some confusion about attraction to you. There could have been some frustration about where you were at in your life. Do you think the friendship for him might have felt kind of a bit one-sided or a bit disappointing or frustrating.
I have not thought about the one-sidedness, but now you say I can imagine, because it would have been I'm taking definitely the way that I was showing up at that point wasn't my best. So
Might have
it
felt
could,
unappreciated on
yeah,
some level.
underappreciated potentially.
Now, I'm not saying it was one-sided or you were being unappreciative. I'm actually just saying, could he have had the sense of one-sidedness, unfairness, disappointment, lack of feeling appreciated? Could that have possibly been under the surface in him?
100%.
Got it. So where we're going to here, so we're not condoning what he's done. We're not dismissing the pain that he's caused you. It's very real and true. In fact, I can tell that it's kind of still, it's easy for you to touch still because it was a very difficult time for you. But what we are also doing is recognizing that not only were you having a very real experience, so was he. And his behavior is an expression of that experience. And we're just starting to feel into some humanness there. Now, the deeper we go into humanness there, the more we can start to actually have compassion for what he was going through, even as we stand fiercely against what he did and need the pain of it seen. So what happens over time is we start to dissolve the notion that he's a shitty person, and the story now becomes he was having a shitty experience and he behaved in a shitty way. That brought me very real pain. Just like a lot of humans, just like me, just like you, often. So the notion of villainhood can only exist if we think someone is inherently bad. But what we're starting to discover is their behaviour, it was shitty behaviour, it was unskillful behaviour, and they were having a very difficult experience. Now, we might even think if we were them, we would have done it differently.
Very, 100%.
Very, very common.
I've definitely thought
very
that.
common, Becky. People reach out to me all the time saying, yeah, but this person in my life is behaving in this way that I would never do, right? I would never behave that way. It's so easy for us to sit on our high moral high ground and say, if I was them, I would do it differently. Here's the thing. If we were actually them, having the actual experience they were having lived the actual life they'd lived, we would be doing exactly what they're doing. What's the data that I've got to support that hypothesis? They're the only person on the planet having their exact experience, and that's exactly how they're behaving. So it's not accurate for us to think I would be different because we aren't living their life. You know, it's easy for me to watch someone kind of meander down my street and like appear as just a bum, a dirty bum who's trying to break into my house and, oh my God, what a low life. But if I'd had their life, their exact life, and I was walking down the street in their shoes with their nervous system, with their history, with their thoughts and feelings alive in me, I would be exactly them. And we lose track of that. We just think that we are infinitely better than others. We imagine it. It's actually just not true. So hopefully you're starting to kind of feel that I'm not asking you to say what he did is okay. And I'm not asking you to just dismiss the pain it brought you. It's so real. And I'm simply asking you to consider that there is a nuanced, painful experience that was alive in him that he was acting from. Do you need to be anywhere near that? No, not at all. You might choose to be right up close to him, like you could go to him now, for example, make a call, meet for coffee and say, help me understand what was going on for you. I guarantee that you would get, if you felt comfortable to share, you would get some deeper insights that would actually probably make you feel more compassionate to him. Do you have to ever go there? No, not at all. You have every right to say, I'm done with that person because I'm done with the impact of their behaviour.
It's interesting when you speak about all of those things, and I suppose having insight into other people's experience is important for us to kind of move on, because it is, what's that quote where they say, holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
And that has definitely been, I've been pretty good in life to make sure that I'm not doing that, but this is the one thing that has. So it's nice to have that insight. And what I hear from what you're sharing, and, like how after reading the book, speaking about compassion and the villain, the us versus them, and, um, you know, part of me wants to sit here and tell you other experiences as well that have happened.
Yeah.
But I also, in the interest of, we've got to move on and move through, it's good for me to have that self-reflection that I'm going to go and take away from. And I hope that it's helped somebody, me being able to share an experience that was really uncomfortable for me. If somebody's in that, if somebody's stuck in that, and, what's, I suppose, one thing that you could give to someone, or a few little tools to circuit break or shift how they're feeling, or a question that they can ask themselves, a simple one-lined question or something like that, to get themselves back into, making sure they're validating themselves, making sure that they're, seeing the other person's experience and not holding on to those things. I know that's a big question. What's one thing that you can do? But is there a starting point for people to be able to make that shift when they're going through a struggle or a challenge or a conflict?
The single most important thing for us to start with in the midst of any relationship upset is being able to pay attention to what we're experiencing, not what we're making it mean about them. Not, oh my God, my partner's a lazy asshole, or not, oh my God, how can they be so hurtful and critical, or how manipulative they are. What am I experiencing? This is a key question, and a question that all human beings struggle with. We're much better at just making it mean something about someone without even stopping to feel into what's the experience. So that's why I started with that question with you. I said, what was it like for you? That's the key question. What's this like for me? And the answers might be something like, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling disappointed, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling unloved, I'm feeling unheard, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling confused, I'm feeling unsure. This is an important place for us to start, because this is the truth of the moment as it is alive in us. It's the truth of it, is the pain, the impact that we're experiencing. My mind wants to make it mean something about you. So if I'm feeling criticized, you said something, I feel criticized, my mind immediately says, I'm sick of Becky, she's so critical. See how I've actually just taken my experience and I've put it onto you as if it's the truth about you. The problem with doing that is that when I then speak to you and say, I'm sick of how critical you are, Becky, you're like, hang on a sec, what? You start to defend yourself against what is an unfair accusation on your terms. So as soon as I go into projecting, I'm amplifying conflict. But if I can stay with what I'm experiencing and start to communicate that, Becky, when you said that thing to me, I noticed I started to feel criticized, actually. That's got to be step one. Step one in all healthy communication is to recognize our experience and try to own and speak to our experience. I'm feeling. It felt to me. Yep. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
If I can't do that, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Like literally, if I cannot recognize my experience, I can never be in a healthy communication about our conflict with you. Because otherwise I'm just going to be saying, you're so critical, you did it to me yesterday, you did it to me 3 months ago, I've spoken to you, you're just as critical as your mother, I'm sick of it, I'm not going to tolerate this, which is all just projection onto you, and that's all just going to leave you feeling more and more and more and more defensive, and things are going to escalate between us. Because the more I accuse you, the more you defend, the more it seems to me like you're not even willing to get accountable for the impact you had on me. The more it seems to you like I'm just villainizing you, the more you have to defend. Things naturally escalate from there.
And so for people, when we're speaking about like feelings and acknowledging how we feel, for a large portion of the population, acknowledging feelings or being safe to be in their feelings is really difficult. It's
Yeah.
something that we've been told not to,
Yes.
with
Completely.
huge, portion of the people that I work with in mining have been told, like if there's something comes up, toughen up, princess, I don't want to hear it. So, I haven't had an experience of being a man in the world. You've had that experience. So I'd love for you to talk for people who struggle to even acknowledge or feel safe in allowing themselves to feel something.
Mm.
What's the first step before being able to acknowledge where you feel and allowing yourself to feel safe in, a conflict that's happened? Maybe it's repeated itself in your
Yeah.
life, or maybe, people keep showing up in your life and they are different people, but the situation looks the same. How can you, take a step back to make those changes or acknowledge that before you can move on to acknowledging how you feel?
Mm. Well, a very good first step to recognize that there is something that you might be feeling is that you have a judgment about someone.
Mm-hmm.
So every time in my life, I'm like, what an asshole. It's actually an indication that I must have been impacted somehow by what they just did. There's that saying in the world that says we see people not as they are, but as we are.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a little bit difficult to get your head around. So let me say it on these hopefully more simple terms. I see someone as an asshole because I'm looking through the pain that they caused me.
Mm-hmm.
So looking through the lens of the pain I'm in, they appear as an asshole. If you and I had a shared friend, a mutual friend, I could see that mutual friend as a bit of an asshole because of what they did that impacted me, whereas you would see that friend in a different light because you hadn't been impacted. So you can see someone as generous and I can see someone as stingy. That gives you an idea that our view of them is subjective, right? I only see them as stingy because, I went to lend them some money and it took them 3 months to pay me back. And when I reminded them, they got a bit frustrated with me.
Mm-hmm.
So we see people through the lens of our pain. So every time, so bring it back to a simple thing, every time you think someone's being a bit of a jerk or a bit of an asshole or a bit selfish or a bit manipulative or a bit, choose your label, anytime you want to judge someone, it's actually an indication that you have been upset.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's very, in this modern world, it's very, we're not very skilled or comfortable to actually be able to acknowledge that we've been impacted by someone. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client when I was in Sri Lanka. She was traveling and she'd been through a very difficult year after losing her mother. And when she came to me, I said, "What do you want to work on?" And she said, "I want to talk to you about my selfish sister-in-law." And I was like, "Oh, great. Okay, good. What has you call your sister-in-law selfish?" And she said, "Well, in the whole 12 months since losing my mum, my sister-in-law has not reached out to me once."
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, as I did with you, I said, "What was that like for you?" Because I'm curious to connect her with her experience. "What was that like for you?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, surely was that disappointing to you? Did you feel hurt? Did you feel alone? Did you feel disappointed? Did you feel sad?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm not the kind of person to be upset about that. It's just how selfish she is." See how for this woman it was more comfortable to label someone as selfish than it was for her to recognize that the selfish label she applied was because she felt actually really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It took about 45 minutes of me just saying, "You have every right to feel upset. You wanted support from someone close to you with what you've been going through. You've got every right to be upset. I wonder what that upset was." And eventually she said, "You know what? I think you're right. I think I actually felt really hurt. That feels uncomfortable to acknowledge. I feel a bit ashamed of feeling so hurt." And I said, "But of course you feel hurt. Of course you felt hurt. I mean, you wanted support. look at what you'd been through.
Mm-hmm.
She was close to you. She had a very clear view of what you were going through, and she didn't reach out. Of course, you felt hurt. So we started to work on validating her hurt, sorrow, disappointment, frustration, and anger. So that was the first place to start.
Mm-hmm.
As we did that work together, she started to see, now that she had her own experience starting to get validated, when I eventually invited her to feel into what's the experience that the sister-in-law might have been having that she hadn't reached out, she said, actually, I think she was in a sense of overwhelm herself. She might have actually felt a bit powerless in supporting me in my grief. So eventually she started to get interested in the sister-in-law's story, experience as well. But it had to start with recognizing her own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Notice how difficult that was for her to do. She just loved the label, my sister-in-law's a selfish bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the culture that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We exist in a culture where we'd rather label others than we would be honest about the experience we're having in relation to them.
Mm-hmm. This, it takes a lot of self-awareness, I suppose, to be in a position to be able to acknowledge that, it is much easier to be able to say that. And I hear it so often, something that is happening a fair bit when it comes to relationships, especially within the resource sector in the world. Let's be honest. There's two things that I would love to touch on. And I hear so often of divorces that are happening and custody battles where partners don't let the other partner see their kids, where there's clearly been a relationship breakdown. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's not going well. You're not able to see your children.
Yeah.
And, there's also relationship breakdowns that tend to happen around the same time. There's a pregnancy, either, during the pregnancy or 2 years afterwards, your partner's had the child and you're no longer attracted to each other. Maybe you're not talking to each other. You've got a child pending, or you've got a child with you and you've got another child pending. I can find there's a lot of relationship breakdowns that happen around that time. What I hear is, what a malicious bitch, and, she's just fucking taken everything away from me.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a divorce where this person has worked their whole life to be able to support and provide for their family. And what it feels like is, or, not going into the feelings because I'll let you talk into that, or is that what has happened for that person is everything that they've worked for has been taken away from them. What is your advice around that, and do you hear it often? And where do you tend to take the conversation when people come to you with that?
So those scenarios that you've kind of painted, they're kind of on the what I might call the more malicious end of things. I've worked a lot with either individuals or separated couples in the midst of that kind of animosity post-separation, particularly if it's a divorce and there's kids and custody battles involved. I've had the privilege of being up close to a lot of those. I say privilege because once we get to the bottom of what's going on, it's actually incredibly beautiful. What both people are fighting for is beautiful. The damage that they're doing to each other is terrifying. So it's important to recognize that coming back to this notion that all human behavior is an expression of an experience. Malicious behavior that's like, I want to cut you out of my life, or I want to get lawyers and destroy you, or I want to prevent you from ever seeing your children again, or I want you to be restrained by a DV order, or I want you to, whatever it is, like very kind of cut and dry, almost kind of brutal responses are all expressions of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings, when we're hurt, when we're wounded, just like tigers, when they're wounded, we lash out. So I'm not condoning the behavior. I'm not dismissing the extraordinary pain those behaviors caused, but I am saying they are an expression of hurt. The reason I'm saying that is because, Becky, this work ultimately, to have successful relationships, we need behavior change, right? To feel better about relationship with someone who's doing some shitty things, we need the behavior to change. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
How does behavior change, Becky? I'll give you two options and you can choose which you think is most accurate. Option one, I change your behavior by criticizing and judging and hating on it. Option two, I recognize that your behavior is an expression of something you're experiencing, and I bring as much loving presence to what you're experiencing as I possibly can. Which of those changes behavior?
Oh, yeah. The latter, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like if I go back to the screaming 3-year-old in a supermarket aisle, saying, stop your screaming won't ever stop the screaming. Keep calm has never kept anyone calm.
No.
Don't be so anxious about that has never soothed someone's anxiety. Whereas if I go to my 3-year-old and I say, if I sit down with her and I say, I can see how incredibly frustrated and angry and disappointed you are that we're not getting M&Ms today. Eventually, if I stay in that place of emotional resonance, she's going to start to just sob instead of scream, and then she'll probably snuggle up and then she might say, can we get some tomorrow? What's happened there is her behavior started to change because I've met her experience with love. So if we come back to malicious actions, if my ex-partner has refused access to my children, heartbreaking for me. Also heartbreaking for them. It's an expression of some drastically hurtful experience that they're having. So we've got two options. One is that we judge them as manipulative, malicious assholes and set our team of lawyers onto them. By the way, the legal model is so adversarial that it will always make things worse. The legal avenue, although it might be necessary, never brings peaceful resolution to both hearts. It might end up in an agreement, but it won't ever build trust because it's oppositional.
Yeah, I love
it's
you speak about that
oppositional.
in the book, and I'm really big on that as well, where there's always an innocent and a guilty, and that's just not
Yes,
a
the
truth.
legal model says someone's more valid than the other, and that will always escalate conflict. It might get us to a resolution, but it won't build trust. We'll hate each other even if we agree on the black and white document. So what we need to do, what we need to move towards is, I recognize how deeply you're hurting. I recognize that what you've said and done is an expression of how deeply you're hurting, and I'm willing to recognize the depth of your hurt. Because that's exactly where the behavior is arising from. Now, their pain is not our fault. Our pain is not their fault. If we come back into the scenario of you and your friend, one of the things I wanted to add at the end was that as you can start to feel into the experience he was having, beneath the behavior that you don't condone that really hurt you, can you start to take it less personally? Can you see that his pain was his from his life? Things were coming up for him that you had no idea about. He was behaving as an expression of those things, and it wasn't about you. Maybe there's some freedom in there for you.
It not being about me is freedom.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It
wasn't about belittling you.
Yeah.
It was about expressing some fear that he might have had around his status at work. Even the inappropriate touching wasn't really about you. It was about his inability to reconcile maybe some attraction that he just couldn't speak to. That's about him and his life. It's about him and his life. It's about his pain. His pain's not your fault. His pain has come to him from his whole life. What you're now left holding is the very real pain that you're in. That needs your loving awareness, always. That pain needs to be brought in and cared for because it was a really difficult scenario for you. But it starts to dissolve the notion that someone's a villain. So in those really, really malicious relational things, relational scenarios, and we don't have to do this, but the courageous work is to recognize that malicious actions arise from hurt. They are unskillful expressions of very deep hurt. And from that place, we can start to see someone not as a villain, but as acting unskillfully from very real pain. And there's a difference there. Can you feel that subtle difference? This book really proposes that we could look out there in the world and start to see all of humanity, every single person on the planet is hoping for things, like longing to feel certain ways, including to have their pain recognized and mitigated and felt by others to be taken seriously about their suffering. So we're all longing and all suffering. We're all walking around with relational pain and we're all doing our best. And the actions that we take are incredibly unskillful and we're creating pain everywhere. Everywhere we go, we're creating unintended pain. So How to Fall in Love with Humanity, the title of the book, I'm not suggesting we should fall in love with what people do. Instead, I'm asking people to fall in love with where we do it from.
Very different.
And if there's a key takeaway in this work for your listeners, is when we are met by people's words or actions that are confronting to us, instead of reacting to what they're doing or saying, can you feel into where they're doing or saying it from and respond there? So instead of reacting to my 3-year-old daughter screaming in the supermarket aisle, thinking she's just being a nuisance, she's embarrassing, she's defiant, she's whatever other label I might apply to someone's behavior, can I see that where she's screaming from is deep disappointment? And can I meet her there just with my presence? I see your disappointment. You know, in the 12 years healing I've done with my beautiful ex-wife after our divorce, the most profound moments in our growth together since our divorce and our healing have been when she or I can say to each other, I can see how much you're suffering still. I can see how much you're suffering. So if she's accusing me of, like, you never fucking listened to me, fish, which has occasionally happened, you never fucking listened to me. Instead of saying, excuse me, I've listened to you for like 12 years, instead of presenting all the data counter to her argument, where's she speaking that from? Can you hear it? Can you hear the experience she's having? She's feeling unheard and frustrated. And when she says, you've never been there for our kids, instead of me saying, excuse me, I've been deeply committed to our kids and I've done this and this and this and this and this, and getting into a polarized argument, can I listen to where she's speaking that from? Where she's speaking from is feeling incredibly overwhelmed and unsupported in parenting our children. Feel how I'm instead of reacting to what she's saying or doing, I'm responding to where she's saying or doing it from. Big masterstroke. Like that's a level of mastery in relationship. So if your listeners are out there and you're fielding, you're receiving someone's criticism or someone's upset expressed unskillfully, whatever they're saying or doing, my invitation is ask yourself, what's the experience that they're having behind their shitty words? What's the experience they're having? And how can you actually start to just recognize that they're having that experience? It doesn't have to be your fault. It doesn't have to be their fault. I can see how disappointed you are. I can see that you're really angry right now. You have every right to be sad. I imagine you feel rejected. That must have been disappointing. I can't imagine how much hurt you still carry about our separation. What I'm doing there is I'm just bringing my loving awareness to their experience. And in time, what happens? My ex-wife stops accusing me of never listening to her because the feeling of being unheard just got recognized. And my wife apologizes for me to saying I've never been a present father because the experience of overwhelm and loneliness just got recognized. So to transform the behavior in relationship, we have to bring awareness to where the behavior is arising from. Is that making some sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of that would hit people quite hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot to take away from today's episode, from the conversation. I know there's so much more depth that we could go into and experiences, but I think we've really touched on, I believe, a lot of what people tend to be feeling. So if there's one thing that you could leave, I suppose, the listeners with to ponder or to take away from, today, what would it be?
Let me leave you with this piece of wisdom that continues to guide me. In any upset, to resolve any relationship upset, the pain I'm in and the pain they are in both need to be recognized deeply. Only when my pain and their pain both get seen can both our hearts start in time to open. Can we feel more trust? Can we feel like we can move towards each other again? Can we feel like we can have a deeper sense of connection? Both my pain and their pain have to get recognized. If we're not recognizing each of those pains, we're dismissing them, things are going to amplify, get worse.
Oh, bloody oh. We could sit and talk here for hours, like we were speaking about before. There's so many nuggets in that. I really appreciate the challenges that you've experienced to get to this point. I appreciate that you took the challenge and took this direction to lead you to this point so you can help other people in their pain and to have these conversations. But I know with the work that I've done and also, having you as a guest on the podcast, if it weren't for those challenges, you wouldn't be in this point to be able to share them. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for going through that.
Yeah, thanks, Becky.
And thank you again for being able to share that wisdom with the guests, and hopefully they got something from it. If you've enjoyed today's episode, you've taken something away, maybe for yourself or somebody else, I would love for you to share, and I'd love to hear from you. We are always keen on having conversations that people want to have and tackling those really hard subjects. So reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining me on the Resource Podcast, where we are making a ripple effect and making massive waves.